I'm waiting until my computer. Oh, there it goes, 9 a.m. Welcome, everybody. Excuse me, to the what day is it? Friday, May 22nd meeting of the BFRW Committee of the State Building Code Council. Can we begin with a roll call?
Roger Haringa,
I am here.
Todd Bayreuther,
Here.
Dan Young,
Here.
Angela Haupt,
Here.
Katie Sheehan, Tom Handy,
Here.
Scott Bastiani. So we do have a quorum.
So Annette, can you tell me how many, are there 6 or 7 members of the committee?
7.
And we have 5?
Yep.
Okay. That's fine. And we need 4, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to be recognized?
Yes, good morning, State Building Code Council. My name is Lori Johnson, and I am the director for the Washington State Food Truck Association.
Thank you, Laurie. Anybody else? I am trying to monitor hands on the attendee list.
I'm not seeing any hands up at the moment.
Okay. All right, with that, I will move on to agenda item number 2, review and approve the agenda. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Tom.
I second.
I heard Dan first. Are there any comments about the agenda? Okay, I'm going to pause a minute because Katie Sheehan is in an attendee.
Got her coming in now.
Okay, as a panelist.
Yeah.
And if you can make note that Katie is now in attendance, that would be appreciated.
I have.
All right. Excuse me. Are there any, where am I? Any comments on the agenda? I don't think there was. So all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, agenda item 3, review and approve the minutes from April 10th. If you can pull those up, Dustin, and if I could have a motion and a second, and then if there are any comments, we can make changes.
I'll move to approve as presented.
Thanks, Tom. Do I have a second?
This is Dan on second.
Thanks, Dan. Are there any edits, corrections, comments? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Okay, if we can, now we are on to the meat of the meeting. Dustin, if you can present the, I do want to make sure. So this is the first time the BFRW committee has considered this, correct?
Correct. So the process for this, we get the petition in. The council has 60 days to respond to the petition. And if there's time, we'll bring it to the BFRW or appropriate committee before the first council meeting to introduce. So the council can't act on a petition at the first meeting where it's introduced. And so we have the opportunity here to have it at this meeting, introduce it at the next meeting. The plan is to bring it back to the BFRW committee next month for further deliberation and a recommendation to the council. And then in the June council meeting, we'll be needing to make a response to this petition. And we have Lori Johnson online here, who is the petitioner. And this is on the 2021 IFC section 319.10.3. This is for mobile food preparation vehicles, maintenance inspections for fuel gas systems. In the 2024 code, that section does move out to 4106.4.3 and has some new sections broken out in there. But yeah, so they're looking for some relief on the inspection requirement for these systems. And I guess at that point, I would turn it over to
Uh,
Lori if it's
that
appropriate. Roger.
Dustin, if I could just, I want to make sure that I am clear and everybody is clear on the process. So BFRW, are we asking for action from the BFRW committee today?
If there's action, it would be to give feedback to the petitioner on the emergency statement and proposed language. And if there
Okay.
was a desire, this could be sent to the IFC tag in the interim for some work if that was decided on here. But we're not looking for a recommendation to the council today, no.
Okay. So will the council address this in the May meeting?
Yes, this will be
It'll
on the
be,
agenda for the May meeting, mainly to introduce and give further
okay.
feedback to the petitioner.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So Lori, yes, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. So just in the past few months, did the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals add on to their annual inspection program for permit form the new requirement, which is under IFC 319, that requires mobile food vendors to have their gas piping and fuel systems inspected by a qualified service provider. There are not enough available in Washington State to supply this test in a timely manner to our 2,000 currently health permitted mobile food vendors in Washington State. So we are just requesting not necessarily a stop of this requirement, but a phased in period of implementation. So the inspection requirement of fuel gas piping systems as required under IFC is just currently not supported by sufficient service capacity within Washington State. Does that give you a summary of those on the on the council that are a little out of the loop on this?
It does for me, although I know I have looked at this at I think it was the executive committee meeting, so I have seen it before. Dustin, if you can maybe go through the documentation that we have that was published. I see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 documents that well, 6 with the petition form.
Get my screens to behave here. There we go.
And I think it would be beneficial for everybody just to understand what the documentation that has been attached, and I know it helped me understand.
And before Dustin gives you his information, I will just add that we contacted 89 service providers across all of Washington State, and 9 of them told us that they would be willing to perform this test and inspection on a mobile food unit.
Okay.
So first up here is just the petition form that we received. So the council received somewhere in the range of 60 to 70 emails requesting some action on this code section. After we got the bulk of those, I reached out, asked for a spokesperson for the group, and let them know that we need to receive this particular form to initiate our rulemaking process on this. So this is pretty much boilerplate stuff here. Lori's already kind of indicated what the reasoning is for this one. As part of that, in the council deliberation, we are required to make a finding of emergency as one part of the decision-making process. And then the second part of that decision-making process is to initiate rulemaking with proposed code language there. And so I reached out to Lori, asked them to provide a statement of emergency. So we have that posted here. And the emergency is that we have the new requirement on the Washington Association of State Fire Marshals checklist that is asking for some additional inspections on mobile food trucks. And the issue is that there's not enough license or not enough providers of that inspection service across the state in the view of the Washington State Food Truck Association. And so we have this emergency statement here. I also worked with them to provide some potential language for what the relief might look like in the code itself. So we have, Tom, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you mid-sentence
No
there.
worries.
But I'm kind of curious what kind of requirements those people that would do that inspection have to have. Do they need to be licensed to do so by somebody, or Or why did so many people refuse? Or, I mean, what's the deal there?
It's, go ahead.
Dustin, if I can, and Tom, it's a great question, and I have some questions too, and I see some other hands. I would ask Dustin to go through the documentation because one of the forms, Tom, may answer your question. So if we can just have Dustin walk through all of the documents that were published for the meeting, and then it may answer your question, it may not. So,
Sounds
okay.
good.
And this is a forum to talk about this today and get the loose ends kind of identified so we can start darning them in. So we have some proposed language here to provide an exception, not a outright removal of the requirement in the code language, but local jurisdictions may waive the requirement is the exception that's put forth in there. And as part of this one, I also worked with them to identify the 2024 model IFC language. There's no new amendments coming into this section as working with our current CR 102s on file. But this one is a interesting one because if this one goes through and we need to provide some relief for a certain amount of time, we'll have to extend the emergency rule and likely work it into the 2024 code cycle or code text as well. And so similar, the same exact language there in the exception, just in a little bit different spot. You'll see that the new sections here below here are broken out as compared to what's in the 2021 section. All the stuff that's in the main paragraph kind of got broken out into separate system types and sections within the 2024 IFC. So so these three documents that I've gone through so far are the required documentation for SBCC to really work with to make a decision on the petition. We have the petition form, an emergency statement for us to evaluate, and a proposal for the language. So with those, items there, we can start massaging this into potential for rulemaking. Next on the list is just some more evidence for us to consider. We've got the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals Food Truck Inspection checklist. And this is a document that's been out there for a while. They revamped this one. I'm not sure exactly when. Looks like it was 2026, February 12th that they had this revamped. And I will note that the requirement for that code section is not new in the IFC. It was added in the model code in 2018 and has been on the books in Washington since then. And the only thing that's changed recently is the addition of a support document, the requirement onto the support document. So this checklist is where we're finding that the requirement is identified where people are becoming aware of it now. Coming up next on here, I have a example of an inspection report from the city of Seattle. Down here in the red kind of highlight is a indication that the service levels are not available, at least in this jurisdiction, and a relaxation of the requirement was allowed to get this inspection across the line. And then the last one here is something that we've been working at the executive committee meeting. Some of the fire representatives said that they would be able to provide a limited list of providers of the inspection service. This is not a statewide comprehensive list, but it is a start, at least for the Seattle area, I do believe. But I will let the fire folks on the call maybe speak to where this all covers. We have some city names out there in a decent list, but it's probably not a comprehensive list of all the capable providers in the state. And so that's what we have on here today. Yeah, there's no more documents up there. And yeah.
Okay, so process. Lori, is there anything that you want to add after looking at the documents?
So
Clarification?
we kept copies of the Washington State Association Fire Marshals Inspection Fire Permit form over the past 5 or 6 years. And it is only in February of 2026 that they added on the requirement of Section 4B that stated food truck operators now need to have their gas fuel piping systems inspected. Even though this was codified a few years ago, the State Association of Fire Marshals did not add that inspection requirement to their form. So that's why it's now becoming a lot more prevalent, because food truck operators are only now aware of this code. Unless they were members of the State Food Truck Association, they just didn't know. So I just kind of wanted to add that in. And also on this form that Dustin gave an example of, does list the certification requirements. Going back to that previous gentleman's question, it does list the including certifications of an approved inspection service provider.
On this document that Dustin has?
Yeah, you're looking at it right now under 4B.
Okay.
The RVIA, RVDA.
Okay. So thank you,
And
Lori.
Yeah,
Go
I'll say
ahead.
one other thing.
Yeah.
Other thing that we're running into is a lot of service providers say, oh, yeah, we'll do this. Oh, but it's on a food truck. Unless we built that food truck, we don't feel for liability reasons that we want to, touch that. So that's what we started to hear. Although we did find 9 service providers statewide that would do it, 9 service providers cannot service 2,000 mobile food units before event season starts. So that's why we were asking for a delayed implementation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And Tom, I'm going to ask, does that answer your question that you asked?
Yeah, pretty much, but
Okay.
I've got
Oh.
more now.
Okay. Well, let me then, I would like to go. Katie and Angela have had their hands up. So let's go. And if you've got more questions, Tom, we'll get to you. So Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Angela was first last time. It doesn't matter.
Oh.
Okay. I tried to push the hand button and it like wouldn't press. Anyway, whatever. I think that we're just editing today, basically, right? Like to make it a better proposal. So I would say Dustin, I like this system. This is a good proposal. It has all the elements that we need. I would just say that the letter, the statement of emergency, my one question was, well, why wasn't this part of the 2024 code? Why wasn't this an earlier emergency for the 2021 code? And so your explanation that the form only got updated in February, Lori, probably should be in here because that's, I think, really important information to help us determine why it wasn't part of the 2024 code cycle. So if that's able to be added, I think that would make this a stronger proposal. And then I guess my other question, so that's a comment. And then my question, and it also makes sense to me that you need this by event season as well, which you kind of threw in there at the end. So I don't know, those 2 things are really compelling to me for the emergency determination. And then the next thing is, is is there any way to make this like, instead of a delayed implementation, like, is anybody going to still look at these things and make sure they're okay? Do they have to be I know they have to be certified eventually under this proposal, but like would these just these tanks just go like completely unlooked at then? And I guess that would be for the fire folks if that would be my only question. So
Yeah,
thank you.
if it helps. So obviously labor and industry inspects all of these gas piping systems before they put their insignia on the food truck.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure you were aware of that. And then moving forward, obviously operators, they usually do a soap test.
Okay.
But now we're asking annually, obviously as a part of the code, for professional service providers to do an inspection and a test, which obviously there's time and a cost added to that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Angela.
Okay, so bit to unpack here. So if I'm understanding correctly, the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals was not enforcing this requirement before February. Is that what was being said?
Correct.
Okay. So even though it's been in the code for 5 years, they were ignoring it. And so then to Katie's point on, is anybody going to be looking at this? So in the emergency statement, this says that this is a phased implementation, but this wording isn't a phased implementation. This is just saying that the requirement's waived. If a local jurisdiction says it's fine, it's fine. And it doesn't need to be looked at for another 3 years, even though, say, a food truck could be 10 years old, haven't had an inspection evidently since it was built, and another 3 years. And I mean, I know there's a best practices by the food truck operators that they may or may not do a soap test, things like that. But just in my opinion, as an actual code official, this is just waiving it until 2029. This isn't saying we're giving you an extra, 6 months to get this done. This is just kicking the can down the road as far as I can see, and not saying, so now food truck operators, don't have to take any action.
Well, if they want to save their lives, they will take action. And what can prevent this moving forward is if the State Building Code Council communicates with the state fire officials and state industry, we can all be in the same loop and on the same page at the same time when codes are about to be implemented in this state.
So the state fire marshals are involved in the code development, so they should be aware of these changes. And I'm not judging anyone for it. I was just asking the question that it was missed, it was ignored. But I guess then you also, Lori, you made a comment about that if food truck operators weren't a member of your association, then they wouldn't have known about the requirement. Does that mean that members of your association were aware of the requirement before February?
We have a member resources section. It's kind of like a giant library that our members have access to. And we have the entire state fire code in a fire code page in our member resources.
Okay, cool. No, that's good to know. So yeah, so I see the problem with this and things like that. I could see a phase where, things have to do, or even giving more of a leeway for these requirements, say having a fire official witness, whatever, a test being done by the operator, something like this. But the wording on this is simply an exception to the requirement. So unfortunately, I just don't think that if the wording could be changed to be something other than just waiving it, it would line up with the actual emergency statement, which is actually saying that it's implementing a phased compliance period of 2 to 3 years. So I just don't think they line up.
And again, our purpose today is to give feedback for the petition, and then we will be addressing it as a council at upcoming meetings. And I will just comment on the emergency section, prior to summer season, we're already the end of May, and I don't see the council taking action till the end of June. So we're, they're just, that's how long it takes us. So, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking somewhat along, in a way, what Angela was getting to, having a different method of compliance if there is nobody that will take it on. I mean, right now it seems, even the list that was supplied in the guidance to the food truck operators, that was a non-vetted list, and there's no guarantee that those people would even ever do it, for like was stated, insurance reasons or whatnot. They didn't feel that they wanted to put their name on something that, but if there were a pathway where if the local jurisdiction who's interested in getting this enforced has an alternate method that could be taken with the bubble test and the fire marshal or the whoever is in charge with fire there, and showing that they've already got the LNI stickers and all of that. It seems like that would be a better pathway to getting there. While these, somewhere, somehow people are going to have to recruit people to do these inspections. And, I don't know, that's probably outside the scope of this to figure out that methodology, but, if nobody recruits people to do it, then it's going to continue to be a problem forever.
Okay, Dan?
So, as a member of the State Fire Marshals Association board and as a fire marshal, I've been using this checklist for a while. Just some history on it. This was started in the Seattle area to help food trucks be able to go across jurisdictions. So the State Fire Marshal's Office made this list with the help of Seattle, Renton, a few others. To otherwise, what was happening is food trucks were having to get inspections multiple times a year, depending on how many jurisdictions they went through. That was just a little history on that. I think it's a good thing. What had happened, I don't think that saying that we ignored this code section. This code section was being implemented by some of our fire marshals. They asked that it be added so we could be consistent across the state. So it wasn't like totally ignored. It was asked by some jurisdictions to add it. So some people have been enforcing it, some have not. And Angela can attest to this. One of the biggest things we try to do is get consistency. And that's what we're trying to do here. So it wasn't ignored. It was just brought to people's attention and on the list. The reason that the list of vendors is non-vetted right now is it was a short turnaround. I was actually part of the group that called. I called 7 different RV dealerships and asked them. And all 7 of them, when I asked, would you do this on a food truck, said yes. And those are actually on the list. I did the southeast portion, like Tri-Cities area, and Kittitas. Kittitas has 1 RV vendor, obviously a lot different than the Seattle area. But everybody I talked to when I explained what the test was needed, all the 7 that I called said yes, they would do food trucks. Obviously, that is just a phone call. Could be different if somebody pulls up with a food truck. I don't know. But anyway, that's the reason it's a non-vetted list. It was a short time frame. So, but I just wanted to make sure that that 1 code section was asked to be added to the checklist so that we could have better consistency across the state. So anyway, thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. I have a question for you, Dan. First off, thank you very much. One of the big, for me personally, determining whether it's an emergency or not is, are there enough people that can do it or not? I understand in Lori's opinion there are not. So answering that question for me is critical as to whether we need to address this or not. So getting a list and vetting it is vitally important. Dan, when you made the list, I think part of the question is in the document, you ask for an approved inspection agency, including RVIA, RVDA, NV, RTA, LPG service technicians. That kind of goes to Tom's initial question. What is required for somebody to do this inspection? And are those people that you talk to, would they meet that requirement of having those? Would they be an approved inspection agency according to those rules?
So there's 2 questions there. First one is the code says an approved agency, and approved is italicized. And what does approved mean? It means the jurisdiction, it's okay with them, right? The RV ID, please don't correct me if I'm wrong on saying there's all these initials. That's a national certification type of thing. One that I talked to, the gentleman was awesome when that was Open Road RV out of Ellensburg. They just purchased, they're a national company. They just bought the one in Kittitas. They are um, setting up their service and everything. He explained a lot to me on that they do this test every day because every RV that they sell, they do this test before it goes out, obviously for liability reasons. And the reason for a yearly test on this is these are mobile food trucks, right? They go down the roads, they vibrate, things can get loose. So they do this test. He said, it's a depending on, obviously, some RVs are more complicated. He said food trucks are a little complicated because they may have a little bit more fittings and stuff. He said, but it's very simple. They do it. It's called a manometer, or a drop test is another word, and they just check to see if there's leaks, right? And if it passes, it passes. If not, then they do the soap test to figure out where the leaks are and fix them. So he said that, typically it's just a fixed fee to do the test, but obviously it can go up if they find issues. So did a great job of explaining it to me. I don't know if I've done a good job explaining it to you guys, but it made a total sense to me that, every RV that they sell, they do this tube for liability reasons. So it's something they all do. It's just a matter of when you talk to them, like when I talked to them, I was very specific saying food trucks. And the ones I talked to, like I said, I did the Tri-Cities Walla Walla and obviously the Ellensburg one. I did say food trucks, and all of them said yes. Now, just because they said yes, if Lori's one of their food trucks goes in and they get a different person that says no, who knows? I understand that part, but like I said, when the gentleman from Open Road explained it to me, that it's a very common test. I don't know if people are asking the wrong things or something like that, but he said his guys are. I can't remember which. They're the first two. One of those two. They're certified in that. So the RVIA, I think, or RVDA. The others, I just said, are they certified? And they said yes. So I don't know what they were certified to. So, but there's quite a different qualifications that are out there.
Okay. So thank you, Dan, and I think for all of us, it's trying to educate ourselves about the details. That is very helpful. I have a couple of things. A question that has come up for me, and I raised this, I think, at the executive committee, is the council writes code. The council does not enforce code. And so I see this as a little bit of I want us as a council to be very helpful. If there's an issue in the state, then there's something we can do. I would like us as a council to do anything we can, but I start to question whether this is our responsibility or not because we write code. Now, the proposed change that Dustin has come up with, that would be a change to the code, and we would give some leeway or time frame for adoption. I think that we have, well, and then my other issue, and I kind of said this just previously, as an emergency, the main issue is, are there enough providers? And I understand that. And I don't know that we have a clear answer. We've had, evidence from Lori that maybe not. Dan and so Dan, this list was a group from the fire marshals.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
if I remember right, it was Seattle, Snohomish, Everett, and then myself
Okay.
doing some of the east side.
So, we have tried as, members of the council have tried to understand how many people are there? Is this a question or not? And I think moving forward, I will summarize, I guess, what I have heard. Language or suggested modifications to the language. Angela said, really clearing up what we would the language of the proposal. Is it you could waive it, or is it for a certain time, for 2 years or something different? I think that the idea of putting something in as an alternate might be a good option. I really liked the comment that Dan had that the approved means basically any the building of or the fire official is the person that determines what the requirement for the inspector is, which does raise the issue, I understand, of different cities or different municipalities or jurisdictions having different requirements. So I think, it seems to me like there was one other good point, but I guess I would ask for anybody from the floor. Did I miss something? Lori, and I guess Dustin, I hope you've taken these comments and I think we as a council really need to understand, is there an emergency or not? And that was the one other point is we have, for us to declare an emergency, there's a fair amount of work that the staff and the council needs to do over the next year, probably, to address an emergency rule. An emergency rule is not, we don't do it lightly because it does take a fair amount of work and, separate filings, particularly since it's separate codes. We are just now adopting the 2020, in the process of adopting the 2024. So it is not a small matter, but if it's an emergency, it's an emergency. So let's make sure that we are really clear that we can convince the majority of the council that this is an emergency. And I'm not clear personally for my vote. I'm not sure yet if it passes that bar. Lori, I think.
Yeah, Roger, I'll speak to your few points. So in
Okay.
regard to it being an emergency, as we are, yes, now entered into event season, how public do we want this to become? Because I can tell you, as event organizers starts to hire food trucks for their fairs and festivals and learn that those food trucks now are not approved based on that jurisdiction's implementation of this new section of just the fire permit inspection form, you might want to connect us with your own media person so that we can kind of combat this when it does get into the, publicity circles. Knowing that there are 2,000 currently county health permitted mobile food vendors trying to make appointments with approximately 9 service providers to get this test done for event season, that also speaks to the fact that it is an emergency. We are willing to accept an interim of like doing a soap test. So we did speak to fire marshals and deputies in Snohomish County specifically. Steve Goforth, if Dan Young remembers that name, he and I talked about just having the food truck operators do a soap test in front of the fire marshal and or have a video of it so that there is a record file of it while we go through this phase in period of time. But I would be willing to add those additions to our letter that accompanied our petition.
Katie?
Yeah, to that point, the emergency that you're talking about, Roger, I mean, I was just trying to do my own little research project, where it seems like generally, I know in Spokane, they're trying to ease regulations on food trucks as much as they can to get them out there.
Whoa, hang on a second. I have a huge dispute with that statement.
Okay.
So the city of Spokane.
So we're not going to let you step on somebody who's been called on by the chair. So I'll let you unmute when Katie's done.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe I'm reading I've read the news report, the headline. So from Creme 2. But to your point, Lori, I guess what I'm not trying to say that they're trying to make anything less safe. I like the policy seems to people wanting to promote food trucks. And so like to your point, Roger, like, are we the right place for enforcement? You know, I want to do what we can to promote the what seems to be the policy. And so if there's any, Lori, you can address this after I'm done. But perhaps there's a way to put something in there that says that, you know, we're trying to find ways to promote small businesses. We want to help as much as we can. Like that was my point. So.
All right, Lori, I will now let you respond to Katie if you would like. I'm wanting to give you every opportunity to
Yes,
respond.
I apologize. In the city of Spokane, they required 2 mobile food business licenses. It had nothing to do with meeting local regulatory requirements. The city of Spokane removed the addition of having a mobile food vendor license. And again, it's in addition to their general city of Spokane business license. It had nothing to do with being insured or health or fire permitted. So I just
Sure.
wanted to make that point.
Okay.
Thank you. Just to respond really quick, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think Spokane is the only uh, uh, jurisdiction that's like kind of grappling with us, like the amount of like how we can promote those small businesses. So.
Okay. Angela?
I guess I'd just like to reiterate, I think what kind of a point that Roger made, though, is that this emergency it is for this summer season. This isn't going to be effective, basically, all that much, because the council can't take action on this until, what is it, mid to late June at our regular council meeting of that. And then in order to do that, even if it is deemed as an emergency, then to move forward, staff has work that they have to do to get it finalized and recorded and everything. So this isn't something that the council can just kind of be like, yep, it's an emergency, go ahead. Because until all that's done, this is still in place. This is still the code as written. And so, and again, I'm also kind of with Roger where we write the code, not, the other part of it. So I'm also on the fence as to, where the council kind of goes with it. So, yeah.
I've got, Angela, I have 2 comments. Number one, I do have a family member who doesn't have a food truck, but has a portable coffee stand. And understanding what the requirements are for permitting and, promoting small businesses, it has been a challenge for her to go through that process. So I think anything we can do to make that clearer. And certainly, I think that there is a statutory requirement, at least, that we consider small businesses, right? We have to do that with every rule. So it is not completely clear what we as a council would be required to do. And then, again, what we would choose to do. And then the second point I would make for this summer, eventually it is up to the jurisdiction. And it sounds to me like the problem here is some jurisdictions are requiring it and some are not. If there was an emergency rule that the council passed in June, even though it may not have gone through all of the legal requirements of staff filing all of the requirements and getting it as a code document, it would be something that a food vendor, if they knew that, if they had that information, could provide the local official and say, here's a here is a emergency rule that is in process of being made, and it may help the food vendors. So, Lori, go ahead.
To address Angela's previous point, we did initially bring this issue up once they sent us their revised form for 2026. We brought this up to the Washington State Association of Fire Marshals, and they said, well, it's not up to us to implement it now or not implement it. You need to take this up with the State Building Code Council. So that's how we came to this meeting here today and our petition being filed. And then if we just decide to do nothing because we've already entered event season, we always want to think proactively and preventatively. So if we do address this now, we may be saving some small businesses that are thinking, what are we going to be doing in 2027? So I just wanted to make those 2 points.
Thank you. And I certainly don't, my comment about wanting to do anything that we can, I don't want to have different, I don't want to have people saying it's not our responsibility. If we can help, I would like us to help. I won't go into my experience with healthcare providers lately who don't seem to want to make a decision, but so Lori, your hand's still up. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, Lori, when you said it was, I think you said Steve Goforth with Snohomish, was that with the Snohomish County or a Snohomish Fire Department?
I do believe he's in the North County of Snohomish County.
Okay. No, there's just so many different jurisdictions, and the one thing that I've made a point of my career is trying to be consistent, and that's why I like this food truck program. And to be honest, now that this has come to light, I'm now joining the food truck committee just to help out with that. I had not been doing that. Obviously, a lot of time commitments with all this stuff, but the program that we have with that is going, allowing, like if you get a test in Seattle, you can come to Ellensburg and your inspection, I should say, not test, but your inspection is good for 1 year. And I really a firm believer in this, so I will reach out to them and see what kind of options we have too with that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We love the statewide inspection program. I don't know if you all remember, but in 2019, 2020, we brought forth a bill with some legislators that would standardize fire code for food trucks in Washington State. And the State Association of Fire Marshals really shot us down at that time. Specifically, it was the city of Renton, and that's a long story, and I won't go into all that now. But Steve Goforth used to work for the city of Everett's fire department and then moved to North County in Snohomish County, if that helps you, Dan. But I look forward to future communications because we love standardizing this type of code. It just makes compliance that much easier for everybody. So thank you.
No, and I'm a firm believer in that because, like you said, is the biggest thing is going across jurisdictions and having different requirements. So anyway, but I will definitely check into that because, and as we've talked about it comes down to the approval of what is acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction. And if we can standardize this across, the state, it would be very helpful for not only you guys, but for us, because as a code enforcer, there's nothing worse than somebody saying, well, somebody else allows it, why don't you? And then having to explain all that. That is, I know it's been a struggle in my career, and I know it'll keep being a struggle after, but I want to do my part. So thank you, Lori.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So I think Lori and Dustin, you've heard a fair amount of feedback. I think some really pointed questions, concerns about how best to move forward. We have a meeting. Is it next? Oh, yeah, Dustin, go ahead.
I'll let you finish your statement, but I just had a question about maybe potential path forward, and I'll let you talk about the next meetings real quick. But I just had a question for the fire folks.
Okay, I just want to go back to our process. So this will be presented next week at the full council meeting, and we can't take action then. So we will take action the following month. We do have another BFRW meeting scheduled, I think, in June prior to that meeting. So in the next few days, Dustin, I don't know when you need to post if there's anything that we would either you or Lori would want to modify with the documentation. That should happen in the next couple of days so that it can be posted for the council meeting next Friday. And, like clarifying the emergency statement, whatever. Um, so yeah, and then I just want to say I agree. I completely agree with Dan. If there's something that we can do to standardize, as a structural engineer, I'm the same way. When I have a jurisdiction interpret the code differently, one jurisdiction interprets it one way and one, interprets the other way, it can cause us challenges. And we wanted, I would like to do anything we could to standardize that. Although, again, I go back to an emergency rule for us as an entity is not a small thing to do. So, Dustin, yeah, go ahead.
So to the when we would need documents for posting, ideally we would have them by Tuesday to post on Tuesday. That's when we're planning right now to get everything out for the council meeting. That being said, we can post documents all the way up to the council meeting. It's not ideal to keep on posting documents closer and closer to the meeting. But what I've heard so far is that maybe the emergency statement could get some revisions, but for sure the proposed language has been kind of requested to be massaged into a more phased approach. So my suggestion for that might be to put a sunrise sunset date on that exception. It's similar to some of the NFAID, the NISAT licensing for the pre-engineered fire extinguishing systems. We had some sunset dates on those exceptions. So similar, that would be my thought on that. But the question I had for the fire folks on the call is got to do with the checklist and how it works with the code text there. In the checklist, I see all the approved inspection agencies and certifications that might be desired for having an approved inspection agency, but the code language there just says an approved inspection agency. Is it possible that the remedy might be massaging the inspection checklist to just like maybe italicize approved in there, and say that it may include these types of certifications? Because right now we're saying some jurisdictions are enforcing the model or the code language and some aren't. And I guess the question then leads to how many jurisdictions are actually using this checklist when they enforce on food trucks. And so if the checklist is what's introducing the hardship, maybe the checklist could be revised and we wouldn't need the rulemaking to do anything with that. My reason for being attracted to that approach is that I think that staff could have emergency rulemaking ready to file right after the June council meeting. That would be if we go to the second BFRW committee meeting and a recommendation is passed there to the council, we could then start the rulemaking documents at that point and hopefully have stuff back from the code revisor and be staged to file right after that meeting. And so we could have almost immediate effect on that point. But the issue with keeping that rule on the book, so this would still be a model code requirement in the 2021 code and the 2024 code. And so the desired effect, if we have a sunset date that's a year, 2 years out, that's kind of not relevant to the problem. The problem is that in order to refile an emergency rule, we have to be working on permanent rulemaking for that, which is easy enough to do, but we have to file CR 101, go through a CR 102 process, file the CR 103 for the permanent rules. And that whole time we're refiling emergency rules, and the emergency rule doesn't get published in the WAC that's published online. It's going to be something that'll live in a notice on the SBCC website. There's not going to be a lot of visibility on emergency rule unless people are in the know that there might be an emergency rule for it. And so if we could get away from the emergency rule and solve the issue, that would be my desire. But I do stand ready to do the emergency rulemaking should that be the path we take.
And Dustin, the other item that you didn't talk about was the potential for an alternate pathway. What is it, the soap test, I think. Can that be worked into the language? I know that it would make to allow that or something in the interim, that would seem like it would make a lot of sense to me.
And then I guess other
So,
kind of thoughts on that alternative. The soap test would cover leakage and pressure drops in the system. That's one part of what the section is asking for, but they're asking for making sure that the entire system is free from damage. A video inspection could possibly cover some of those concerns, but Ken might have the solution for us or just have more comments for us. I don't know.
Ken, go ahead.
Ken Brulette, City of Seattle Fire Marshal's Office. All right, I'm sitting back here listening to everybody, what they're talking about, kind of unpack a little bit what I just heard from Dustin. I'm going to first address the NICET that you wanted to use that as a comparison to that when we extended the date for implementation. That's totally different. That NICET was a state of Washington amendment that we put together and then decided to postpone the implementation based on the length of time it took to obtain that NICET. So that wasn't a model code issue. This is a modeled code issue. It was brought up at the previous meeting of the executive by Ben and also again today that it's been in the model code since 2018. So this is not a state amendment. This again, model code. The model code already allows for the fire code official to grant modifications to any section of the code that has been basically deemed, impractical because of whatever reason it is. And that's why each jurisdiction has the ability based on their unique situation to grant modifications. That's what can be allowed right now. You do not have to get involved and create some type of an emergency. And I don't see this as an emergency because that condition is still in the code right now to allow that fire code official to grant a modification. With regards to a checklist that's developed by an organization, that is not encompassed the entire fire code. Just because something's not listed on a checklist doesn't mean that it's not a requirement to be enforced by a permit holder. Or again, the AHJ enforcing it and having the ability to grant modifications and not enforce that section because it has practical difficulties. If you decide to remove or put in some kind of exception, the City of Seattle Fire Marshal's already said that that he believes that there's plenty of testing agencies and we will continue to enforce that section, which is going to cause confusion throughout the state. So I'm just hoping that you guys will reconsider and at the next meeting and not consider it an emergency and just allow each individual fire code official to address this code requirement again from the national code in their jurisdiction and not try to make some big change for all of Washington state right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Katie, go ahead.
So if that's the case, is there an option to just clarify the nature of what Ken's talking about in a published opinion? Where they say, it's like I don't know what the question would be, but could it be something along the lines of, and maybe I'm not understanding this correctly, but can a fire marshal in a particular jurisdiction, make their own determination on this rule based on their understanding of the resources available in their jurisdiction? Like, could that be something that we get out this year as an opinion, and then to the degree that it needs to be modified in the next code cycle? Ken, is that possible based on what you just said?
I don't think it's necessary. The fire code already has the section in chapter 1 under modifications. All that fire code official has to do is just read it, understand that they have the authority to do that, to grant modifications when there are practical difficulties when trying to apply certain parts of the code. I don't think an opinion is necessary. I just think you can do it now.
which I kind of, Dustin's comment about, is there something that we can do, Dan, I'm looking to you, either through rewording the 4B and the inspection form and or the State Fire Marshals Association publicly coming out and making it clear, here's what you can and should be doing, and here's options, and that meets the code. Again, I'm not sure exactly, but could that be an option, as Dustin said, through modifications of what the fire marshals are doing, rather than the building code council making a change?
Yeah, so since you just addressed me, I'll answer. One of the biggest things, like I said, is consistency, and I will work with the our group of fire marshals that are on the committee for the food truck, because the one thing I don't want to happen is that this program goes away because everybody just does the Wild West, right? We as an association are committed to this, and we've worked with Lori in the past, from my understanding. I have not personally worked with her, but the committee has said they have. And we will continue to do that because we want to have that working relationship. And we don't want this program to go away because of, you know, the way it works right now is if somebody is on the approved list, which Kittitas County is, City of Ellensburg is, right? So I'll just use us as a small thing. If Dan Johnson approves it, because he uses this form, when a food truck comes in and they have the approval from Dan Johnson, and I know he's used this form, I'm not going to look at it and we just move on, right? Because we have to trust each other. But it comes down to, are we enforcing it, and we're enforcing it consistently? And I think this 4B, I think there is some room to work it a little bit to make it a little more clear of what actually the expectations are. And these are some of the certifications, right? And it still comes down to an approved process by the local fire marshal. So I definitely want to make sure we work on this to ensure that the trust is there. So if Ken Brulette does it and I do it, Ken and I trust each other because we're using the same form. I want that to happen, and I don't want consistency to go out the window, because this is a huge program that the Fire Marshals Association is committed to, and we want to continue that. So we will work on that. Obviously, I don't think it's going to happen by Tuesday with a 3-day weekend coming up, all that. Just honest there. But I think definitely we can work on that, and we will be in touch with Lori too to make sure that she can get the word out to her association also. So anyway, then
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Tom?
Yeah, I just kind of think that's a great idea, Dan. If you guys work on it, get the wording such that, when the layman food truck operator reads through this checklist, so they can prepare for it, that they understand that there is that flexibility, with who's actually doing the inspection and signing off on it. So that's a great thing. Thanks.
All right. Are there any other comments? Well, I will just say, Lori, I understand the challenge, and I believe that the State Building Code Council is supportive of doing what we can to address the challenge. Is it an emergency rule? Maybe, maybe not, but let's continue to work it. And again, the next 3 meetings, I'm assuming that the issue will be addressed at the meeting next week, the full council meeting. We have another one of these meetings set up for, Dustin, do you have the date?
June 17th.
June 17th, and then there is the council meeting a week later. So over the next month, hopefully we can get a reasonable solution. So Dan, go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, because I know we've talked about this with the last emergency ruling, and we're learning all this again. The next council meeting, it is just to introduce, right? There is no action that can be taken, correct?
Yeah, they can't deny it. They can't approve it.
Okay.
Introduce it.
So that gets it introduced, and then that still gives us time to work on another solution. So maybe we don't have to go an emergency rule. Correct.
Yeah, ideally, if we had some updated documents, I think the best place to target those would be for the June 17th BFRW committee meeting. It gives us about a month to massage it.
I just want to make sure that, you know, we have some time, because I know with vacations and obviously what Lori said, that their season's beginning, and there's going to be a lot of time constraints for all of us. So, okay, thank you.
And our response to the petition is due on the 28th of June, which is a Sunday. So the Friday of that council meeting in June, we'll make a decision. And even if the decision is to deny and address this in a different way, we can still work an opinion out on this one. And we could potentially bring opinion language to the BFRW committee meeting next month as well. I'll add that to the list of things to bring to that meeting. But that would be an opinion in line with making sure that the inspection checklist form and an opinion kind of go hand in hand and can support each other, or the emergency rulemaking language, and then work on some alignment with the emergency statement and the proposed language there. And I can work with Lori on that one.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Unless there are other questions or comments, I am going to go back to the agenda, and item 5 is other business. Do we have any other business?
No, sir.
Ken's hand is up. Go ahead.
I just have a question. With regards to the public comments on the CR 102, it said it was limited to 3 minutes. I'm hoping that means it's limited to 3 minutes per comment on each wax section, because I already have 2 or 3, and there's no way I can be 3 minutes for 3 different code sections to discuss. So I'm hoping it's per wax section would be the 3 minutes.
I think we can work that, Ken. If you got, is it possible you could submit maybe more than one request to deliver oral testimony on those, and then we can.
That's exactly what I know. I'm breaking it down for each wax section and having written comments, but I'm timing it out. The first one was 2 minutes and 56 seconds on one wax section, and then I still have 2 more that I'm working on right now. So that's
Okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to put you on there more than once there. And, also depending on the number of signups we get, we might entertain a modification of that time limit. But let's work with 3 minutes, and I'll be happy to add your name multiple times on the queue.
okay. Thanks.
Hey, Katie, go ahead.
Just in response, so that will that apply to all the public?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Just making sure. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you, everybody. With that, our meeting is adjourned.
Have a great weekend.
Have a
you,
safe
everybody.
weekend, everybody. Bye.